Remember, the recent bull run in the tech stocks has prompted many of India's tech unicorns to announce their IPO plans for 2021. Some of the key segments like e-commerce, FinTech and EdTech has seen strong growth, and that's been driven by an increase in the online adoption. Leaders in these segments seem to be gaining a lot of market share and are improving their unit economics. To talk a little bit more about the likely IPOs in 2021, we're joined by Karan Mohla. He's the partner at Chiratae Ventures India. Thank you so much for taking time out and joining in. So clearly we've been talking about this, massive tech-fueled IPO run that we've seen globally. Do you think that we're likely to, see sort of a follow-through, particularly within the EdTech, technology, IT space as well back home?
Yeah, no, again, thank you for having me. I completely agree with that. I think if you look at the participation by technology companies in general in, the Indian stock market, it's actually quite small. And actually most of it has been done by the IT services. But core tech companies, consumer tech companies, software companies, so on and so forth, there's very little, and mostly in the last 2 or 3 years. And if you look at value in the US or the China or any other stock market in the world, a lot of it has come through tech stocks. So it's, I think, part and parcel of the maturity cycle of India, where you will see a lot of companies, hopefully from 21 onwards, which will have large IPOs and create a lot of liquidity as well as a lot of shareholder value, for their investors, for the management, for employees. Which is, a great sort of platform to build off for future years.
Okay. I just want to understand as well, how you've read into some of the valuations that we've seen globally. The likes of Airbnb, DoorDash, for instance, they've been mammoth valuations. Do you think that, and listings as well, and do you think that they have been justified, or this is likely to just be one big bubble?
So that's a great question. Part of the reason for the big uplift on value for DoorDash, Airbnb, and a whole host of others is there's a flight to quality. If you look at Uber, they are at their highest ever market cap today, despite all the issues they've had. And I think there's a general flight to quality. So the big lesson for that is there's a right time to go public. And I think that's where Indian companies have done well to sort of prepare themselves, because going public is a one-time affair, but then being a public company is an ongoing thing. And you have to really be very well prepared as an institution, as, to have the right systems internally and externally. But, to your question, I think we'll have to see. A lot of this is fueled by, the near-term liquidity. But certainly there's a lot of flight to quality, and that's likely to continue. And there's a flight to scarcity because there aren't enough liquid, large tech stocks in India. So I do expect that to have a big part in these companies getting the right kind of market valuations as and when they go public.
Okay, fair enough. So, Karan, I just want to understand from you, which are some of the key sectors in which you believe that we will see major startups in the year 2021, going ahead with their listing plans? Which sectors do you think are likely to dominate?
Yeah, so, I think across the board, there will be companies that at least I hope will emerge from different sectors. Certainly consumption-faced companies will be one. We do expect companies which are really, which have done a lot of the work in laying the digital infrastructure, whether it be logistics or payments and so forth, also look at potentially going public. And then you have both software companies from India, which are addressing global markets, as well as the FinTech companies, which are at scale. So those are probably 4 segments that I can potentially look at where companies could come from in terms of going for a public offering. And then I think that's what sort of builds on for the future set of companies to go public as well.
Now let's just take a look at, a handful of companies that are planning their IPOs in the next year. Flipkart, $25 billion valuation. Zomato, $3.3 billion. Delivery, close to $1.5 billion. And even Ola at close to $7 billion in terms of the valuation. Any comments on anything that stands out to you within the names that I listed out, and particularly any names within this space or within this cluster that you think could do exceptionally well or that are perhaps poised to fail?
No, I think it's difficult to comment on single companies, to be honest, because there's a lot of factors that kind of go into into a public offering. But I think ultimately you're looking at 3-4 things. One is it a clear market leader in a segment? Are they at a scale which is able to justify the kind of valuations they're looking at in public markets? Is there predictability in the business, in the profits, in the risk profile, and that communication to institutional investors and hopefully to retail investors in India? And is the management team well set up to create the right kind of machinery, both again internally for for the operations as well as externally in terms of communicating with shareholders, investor relations, etc. I think these would be maybe 3 of the 3-4 of the key points to look at for companies to go public. And if these are there, I think most companies are well set up to hit the public market, and typically, preparing to go public takes anywhere from 12 to 18 months at least, because a lot of things need to be set up in place. So there's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes as well. So I think that's how companies should be looking at it, and I think that's there, and market conditions are favorable. Then hopefully all of these will be have a very good public offering.
I just want to focus in on 2 spaces that have thrived, if you will, during the lockdown. You've had a lot of these cloud kitchens do well, and EdTech as well as a space has been an exceptional performer with the likes of Byjus as well. Give us a sense as to how you're looking at the overall competitive landscape, some of these companies holding out, and what kind of a response you see for these IPOs.
Sure. So I think if you look at EdTech, this is a very large market opportunity across the board, and very, very large profit pools that companies like Byjus, Unacademy, and many others are going after. In many respects, 2019 was the year where they where they came much into the forefront. In 2020, for the reasons that we all know, I think they've sort of gone up 2-3 notches. So I think EdTech allows companies, the segment itself allows companies to create those large profit pools as well as to grow. And public markets will look at both high growth as well as predictable profitability. And I think that's where it's set up well, because there haven't been too many large education companies in general, not just EdTech companies, but education companies in general that have come out of India and had large successful public offerings. And similarly on food delivery or cloud kitchens, I think the main question in years past had been how these companies will become profitable at a unit level, then at a company level, and then repeat that. And I think a large part of that has been answered, and the circumstances have probably helped. But I think a lot of credit should go to the founders, to the management team in being able to set up for success. And I think these are 2 of certainly the most encouraging and the sectors which have a lot of tailwinds behind them, not just now, but I think going forward as well. I think one thing which the pandemic has done is really digitize education as well as food delivery and everything around that. So I think it sort of bodes well even in the long run.
Okay, and given that a lot of companies have also had to rein in their costs, really relook at their business models, especially during this challenging time, pivot their strategies to a great extent, what do you think are going to be some of the challenges when it comes to listing in the next year?
Yeah, look, I think listing in general is one of the toughest things that people can do. So I go back to the point that, in India, we've really not had participation by tech companies in the public market. So I think the first step will be just communicating how the business model works, how that will sustain, how profitability will, grow from where these companies are today, and really sharing that with institutional investors and then ultimately with retail investors. That's the first part, right? And that's a big challenge to overcome because it's not been done before necessarily, especially not at scale. I think the second will be, how much capital availability for these companies is there in the public markets, right? Will the first 10 companies take up a lot of liquidity, and then will it be tougher for the remaining ones? I think that's something for people who are well versed with public markets. They'll have a better opinion in it, but that's certainly a question. And then the third will be how these companies are set up for predictable growth in the future. That's what public markets want, right? They want predictability of growth. Public markets don't like surprises. And the way to ensure that and communicate that and to have your company set up the right way is a big, big challenge for any high growth startup to do, because you're already dealing with so many things. And bringing in predictability is the ultimate the goal, right? To be able to go public. So I think those are maybe some of the things these companies and others should be aware of, and I'm sure they're already working on that.
All right, we'll let you go on that note. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining in and giving us a sense as to what we can expect when it comes to IPOs come 2021. And with that, then we'll call it a day right here on Startup Central. Hope you connect with us and reach out to us on suc@etnad.tv. Thanks from everyone that put the show together for watching.